Hey everyone, welcome to the Entry Point Hunting podcast. Today I am very excited to have Laura Balyx on the show because Laura is an emerging biologist based out of Penticton in the beautiful Okanagan Valley. And she recently completed her Master of Science from the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, where she was exploring how human disturbance shaped mountain goat habitat, selection, and movements in the Cathedral Provincial Park. Laura has also had the privilege of contributing to various wildlife research endeavors, from testing for disease in bighorn sheep to briefly exploring the risks of chronic wasting disease on caribou recovery. Now, Laura is eager to settle into a fulfilling career in biology and make her mark in the world of wildlife conservation. Welcome to the show, Laura. Hello.
Yeah, hello, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to dive into all things conservation and mountain goats, and then also some perspective of what it means to be a female in all of these
Yeah.
endeavors that you're doing, because it's been predominantly a male dominated industry for a lot of time until recently. I feel like it's changing a lot
hmm
now. Yeah.
Big time.
So maybe tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into conservation and wildlife research. Was that something you grew up with? Did you come from a household of biologists? What's the background on you?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of the most interesting thing is that I did not come from a family who hunted or like spent a lot of time just outdoors. Like I did do a lot of skiing and camping as a kid, but
Mm,
most of the time, like I grew up dancing, I grew up playing music. So
nice.
more so just like the creative aspects of me were
Me
in my
too.
childhood. Right on. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
and then as I kind of grew older, I always for wildlife. Like that was kind of like the thing that was consistent throughout my childhood was just knowing that I wanted to work with animals no matter what that looked like. I didn't think it was going to be veterinary and I didn't think it was going to be marine, but and then so therefore I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do, but I have this I have this idea that I think is going to make me really happy in life. And then as I grew older, through high school, I kind of realized that university was probably the best way forward for that.
Mhm.
And it just so happened that, like growing up in Kamloops, Thompson Rivers University is right there, and they have an amazing natural resource science program,
Cool.
which teaches you everything from like fisheries, mining, forestry, and wildlife is also included in that. And so I enrolled myself in that right out of high school. So I started my undergraduate degree right out of high school.
Nice.
And that's kind of when I was introduced to what conservation in British Columbia was, like what animals there would be, like predominantly like deer, bighorn sheep, bears, all that kind of thing, and also how hunting plays a role in that.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of like where it all really started. So really just like a foundation of love for all things wild as a kid, and then sort of growing into a larger understanding of like the bigger picture of conservation as I got into university.
Yeah. And so when you started to venture more along the conservation side of things, I mean, you could have gone into biology of like plants and swamps and things like that that
hmm
are still nature based and still about wildlife. But what drove you into animals per se, and then mountain goats very specifically?
I'm gonna say a lot of luck. I'm gonna say a lot of little breadcrumbs from the universe pointing me in the right direction. So I was very lucky in the summer of 2017 to get a job with the provincial government in Penticton, actually.
Cool.
And the base of that job was disease testing bighorn sheep for the Seroptes ovis
Mm,
ear mite that is uh, predominant in some of the herds in the South Okanagan bighorn sheep populations. And so it was really cool. I can remember my first day. The PhD student running the research was Dr. Adam Herring,
mm,
and we also partnered with obviously the government, provincial government, and then the Penticton Indian Band. So they had built these big sheep pens
yeah.
on the reserve land, and one was a test herd, and one was a control herd. And I got to touch bighorn sheep, and I got to like every week we had to go like supplement their feed and stuff, and it was just like it was the coolest thing. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of, and like a wildlife biology job, especially my first
Cool.
one. Like, what a
Yeah.
treat.
Yeah, that's pretty unique. You didn't get stuck like behind a desk analyzing
Yeah,
data or
exactly.
something. Yeah.
Which is what I do now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then so that just kind of introduced me to a bunch of amazing people who are still in my life today. And in that job as well, because of where we are located in Penticton, Cathedral Provincial Park was of interest for the mountain goats there. So the first
Mhm.
time I ever actually saw a mountain goat up close was in Cathedral Provincial Park.
Cool.
And I just thought they were the coolest, most beautiful animals I've ever seen, and
Yeah,
in
they're
one of the
pretty
most beautiful
majestic.
places I've ever been to as well, right? Like it's pretty
Yeah.
picturesque there. And that just kind of sent me down the path of knowing the right people, having like the right mindset with it, and just like ending up doing some really, really cool things with large mountain ungulates.
Yeah. Yeah. And so touch on what that resulted in. Like you ended up doing some extensive research on mountain goats. Um, what did you find? What were you looking for and what did you find?
Well, so I through the government, I kind of understood that getting a master's degree is kind of what you need to really get a career and make like waves, I'd say, in the conservation world. At least it kind of sets you up for that because then you get the research background, you kind of have a
Mhm.
specialization, you understand data collection and analyses, networking, like all that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I knew that a master's was probably in my near future. And then I actually had a friend tell me that they were going to be starting to collar mountain goats in Cathedral Provincial Park to look at how human recreation and helicopters were affecting their behaviors.
Mm.
And I knew that it was going to be out of oh, the University of British Columbia, Okanagan, with Dr. Adam Ford. And so I kind of hopped on it right away and sent him an email. I mean, I think before it was really even on his radar. um, just kind of putting my name in there. And then, yeah, it took about a year, but I finally ended up being accepted for it.
Cool.
And then that was kind of my journey to Kelowna into graduate school. And then, yeah, getting to study and really learn everything I could about mountain goats for about 2.5 years I spent there.
So I'm not super familiar with Cathedral Mountain Park. So why would there be helicopters there, and how is that impacting the mountain goat populations?
Yeah, so Penticton is kind of in a cool region. Like we're a pretty small community, but we do have airport and
Mhm.
military, as well as a couple other um, helicopter companies operate their training permits from Penticton because it's a good base.
Mhm.
And so, from what I understand, is that also like high elevation helicopter flights is obviously very dangerous and
Mhm.
like needs a lot of training. And so, Cathedral Provincial Park is one such area where some companies have a permit to operate training out of. So they fly up there and they
Oh.
kind of practice like low level
Hmm.
hovers and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's just like an area that is mountainous, is high altitude, is rugged, and therefore is like a good training ground for
Mhm.
their pilots.
Okay.
And
And
that's been going
so
on for like a number of years as well.
yeah.
It's not new.
Yeah, yeah, not new, but makes sense it would be the right terrain to practice in.
Mhm.
Um So, with the research that you were doing, you were looking specifically at the intersection of human activity and mountain goat patterns and populations. What was the finding from your master's research?
Definitely goats love to come into camp to lick urine. So
Oh,
that was kind of
okay.
like the whole central thing is mountain goats have been observed in many different protected areas, utilizing humans as a source of anthropogenic salt. So, right,
Interesting.
like we don't always use the toilets. We just kind of go outside and pee, and that has a lot of really important minerals for lots of animals, and goats have figured that out.
That is
So
so bizarre. I would have
they
never
exhibited,
thought of
right?
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think like for food, like food as in like our scraps of food, but not our already body processed fluids.
I love it. They come running down. So yeah, they exhibited really strange behaviors where they would kind of come into the forested area, right? Because the campground is forested, which you don't really see mountain goats in forests all that often.
Yeah.
And so they come down in the early morning, like when it was still dark, and they'd walk around the campgrounds and they'd lick up all the pee and eat all the dirt. And then they'd kind of like by mid morning, like probably after people have their breakfast, they would go back up to their hillsides there and spend the rest of the afternoon like on the snow and just hanging out.
Hmm.
But yeah, they exhibit these weird movements where they would come in and consume salt, and they'd also at this point would be really close to humans, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of people don't know how to behave around mountain goats, you know, like you don't really see them all that often. So like while it is a very, very cool experience, I think there's also just the risk of like, especially when nannies have kids around, like can certainly be dangerous animals, right?
Yeah.
So there was that whole aspect of concern for humans as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I found that goats definitely use and select for areas associated with humans, which was interesting, but not
Yeah.
surprising. And also, I mean, I did, of course, with anything ecological, you run into some challenges with data collection and everything, but I did find some um, information pointing to that helicopters do negatively influence mountain goat movements.
Hmm.
Definitely saw some more like tortuous, so like they kind of move around more, they go and they hide kind of thing from these helicopters. So they definitely are like disturbing them from what they were doing before, either this like resting or foraging.
Mhm.
And of course, like with snow so deep in such a high elevation, the main concern is depleting body condition from just having to move more in the snow, right?
Moving more and eating less if they're hiding versus, say, foraging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so
Interesting.
definitely that was like the main concern, and that's kind of what we saw a little bit of. Yeah.
And so was that year round? Like, I mean, I don't know how often people are in those areas camping or just being in those spaces and recreating necessarily. So were you observing differences in seasonal patterns from those mountain goats as far as them coming down into camps to get salt and urine versus in other seasons where there wouldn't be those people and sort of tracking the differences in those patterns?
Yeah, so I did look at seasonality big time because humans are only really there in the summertime is
Mhm.
when the park operates. And then in the wintertime, they did exhibit migration down to like a south facing slope along the British Columbia Washington border,
Mhm.
um, which is, I assume, where they kind of overwinter at, which is
Yeah.
also where the helicopters like to fly. So definitely
Interesting.
looking at like it's kind of like year round disturbance for them. 'Cause in summertime, they have the humans, in the wintertime, they have the helicopters.
Yeah. And did that result in changes in population or higher death rates or anything like that with having those disturbances?
Um, I think 2.5 years is really too short to be able to say anything
Yeah.
about declines. There has been a historical decline per se, like, Cathedral Provincial Park has noticed, I think back in the 1980s, there were around 70 mountain goats, but now the herd sticks around 30 to 40.
Wow.
Um, Something else I did discover by collaring these goats was that there is a lot of transboundary movement. So it is highly likely that there is another mountain goat population just south of the Canadian border. Because we did have one male, he pretty much got collared, and then he left down south and he stayed in this one region for about a year and a half. So I have to
Oh,
assume there's
wow.
other mountain goats there.
Yeah.
He's not just hanging out by himself.
Just a lone wolf,
So yeah, exactly.
lone
So it's
goat.
like our goats kind of like leaving this area, moving down south because of disturbance. Like we don't really know. This is kind of like what we found from our little 2.5 year study. But
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And from that research, I'm always so curious what happens with that information. So you've done 2.5 years of research, you've observed patterns, you've observed cause and effect, then disturbances. Then what happens from there? Like, where does that information
Mhm.
go, and does it impact anything in the conservation front?
I hope it does. I mean, even just in understanding like mountain goats, I was able to contribute this research to like a larger case study
Mhm.
publication. So I um, collaborated with a bunch of biologists from all over British Columbia and also down in the States, and we kind of collaborated all of our individual observations from our protected areas into like
Yeah.
one big case study, which you can read now, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
But it kind of talks about how like it's not just one instance. This isn't only happening in Cathedral. This is happening to mountain goats, kind of like all over the place where they interact with people
Yeah.
in a
Yeah. So
recreational
it can be
setting. Yeah.
extrapolated to other spaces.
So I think just like right now, like it's just education. One of my management recommendations was creating like a Goat Smart program, kind of like a Bear Smart program.
Yeah.
But just because I think like people are like, oh, like they eat grass, they're not dangerous, right? But it's like,
Hmm.
well, if you got between a mom and her baby, I think there's definitely a chance, or
Yeah.
even like a lone Billy. And so just kind of educating people on how to coexist with mountain goats and in their landscapes,
Yeah.
and what
Especially
to
if they're
kind of avoid.
coming into camps more actively
Hmm.
seeking to
Yeah,
be in those
exactly.
spaces. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and so have you had, I mean, in doing this research, I'm sure you become very popular among mountain goat hunters. So have you had people reach out to you uh, on that side of things, and people curious from the hunting aspect about what they, I guess, what they can do to maybe help with populations or where people can hunt? Like, I don't know if there is management around Cathedral Provincial Park specifically about who can hunt there.
Yeah, and I'm not as well versed on the hunting regulations as I mean, probably even you are. I could probably learn something from you about this, because I'm not a hunter currently.
Mhm.
I do know that in Cathedral, like the core area, so the area that has the hiking trails and that people come in summertime is like always out of bounds for
Yeah,
hunting. But they do
for sure.
open up the larger area, I think from August until April,
Mm.
for hunting. I'm not exactly sure from what, but I actually haven't gotten a lot of inquiries about hunting mountain goats. I feel like the people who do hunt mountain goats are like very, like that's a lot of work. That's a lot of
Yeah.
effort. I think
Yeah.
when you're going out for a mountain goat, like you know what you're allowed, where you're going, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
the
was just
biggest,
curious because if somebody's been doing the research, like you would have the insight. Where are
mm,
they?
yeah,
So
that's
I'm
true.
surprised you
Yeah,
haven't been contacted by anybody to be like, "Hey, you
yeah,
happen to know exactly their migratory patterns. Where would I find a goat around hunting
yeah,
season?"
right. Yeah, only in very hard to reach places.
Yeah. Yeah. You had touched a little bit on things that are impacting mountain goat populations, not just from the human aspect, but from the disease front as well. Is there anything that you think would be pertinent for people to know about mountain goats specifically, and what's affecting them from a disease front? And then what can people do to maybe be smarter about how they interact with mountain goats as well?
I think from a disease front, mountain goats are pretty well off. I think just in the Okanagan, like compared to bighorn sheep that are kind of riddled with disease,
Hmm.
like mountain goats can get mycoplasma ovo pneumonia, so they can carry that, which is
Hmm.
what's really devastating some bighorn sheep populations. We do test for it whenever we capture them and collar them. However, all of my goats came back negative.
Nice.
So I think overall, like goats are pretty good in terms of like disease.
So would Movi
um,
be transmitted from the bighorn sheep to the mountain goats? Is that how that's
that would
like?
be the idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so there
Yeah.
is some potential there for crossover.
There is certainly, even in
Okay.
Cathedral, the next closest kind of protected area, snowy protected area, South Slopes is a well-established bighorn sheep population,
Mm.
which has tested positive for some disease in the past, which is
Mhm.
why we tested those ones. But yeah, I don't really know all about their interactions and such,
Yeah.
and how likely it is that it would pass on, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Okay.
possibility.
And then what can people do to either help with conservation and habitat and that kind of stuff, or even just in the interactions with mountain goats since they are in the areas where people like to recreate?
I think always just keep your distance.
Mhm.
I think it's really exciting. You want to get the picture. You
Yeah.
want to show that you saw something out in the
Yeah.
wild, which is really, really cool. But I think keeping your distance, like letting the animals kind of do their thing, is like the most important thing. Like, don't get in between them.
Yeah.
If you can, pee in the outhouse,
Yeah.
which is just so silly to say. Or like if you do have to pee on the trail, like there's like wash it down with some water or like cover it with rocks kind of thing is kind of what they say, or pee in the rocks, not in the soil.
Hmm, interesting.
Um, yeah, just little things like that. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think even like us as researchers, like we're still learning about the best way to interact in these kind of situations because they are so new and novel to us now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so much we don't know still.
Hmm.
And like you say, the research that you've done has gone into a collaboration so people can at least read and learn more. And hopefully, I mean, the Wild Sheep Society, they do a lot of good advocacy work for the sheep
Hmm.
side of things, which inevitably will help also on the mountain goat side of things.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
the Rocky Mountain plug for the Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance as well.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yeah.
they did some funding for our work, certainly, and yeah, they have been very involved with all that as well. They're really great people to know and help out too.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, Kind of branching off from that a little bit, how do you see human wildlife interactions and coexistence from what you observed in your research? Like, are we doing it well or are we ruining things?
It's hard, right? I think that even when I was learning about this project, especially not as a non-hunter, I was like, "I have no impact on the environment because I just go out and I walk around and I put up my tent and I stay a night somewhere and I pick everything up afterwards and I leave," right? But
Yeah.
I think the more that you learn, it's like there's no one in nature, like, we kind of all affect everything, no matter
Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah.
And even, like, our presence on the landscape certainly, can throw things off for certain animals. So I think that we are doing well. I think people do have really good intentions. I don't think anyone's upset with the amount of protected areas we have. I think everyone could agree there could be more.
Mhm.
And I think that it's just a matter of education, a matter of telling people like, oh, like climbing and mountain biking and hiking through these places as wild as they are, like can affect animals in the way they move and the way they interact with their landscape. And so I think it's just the acknowledgement of knowing that at some level I do have an effect, is like
Mhm.
is enough for a lot of
I
people.
think people having an awareness that even just a presence on the landscape does impact things. It impacts, maybe an animal that would have walked through there in the morning, or it's part of their, their area that they forage in. And
Hmm.
especially during the wintertime, I find that because you can't see the land itself, if it's blanketed in snow, that people are a bit more careless in the way that they
Hmm.
recreate on the land. So, I don't want to target any particular parties, but motorized vehicles in the wintertime can do a lot of devastation to the the growth underneath the snow for when it comes to springtime, and just wrecking or creating more trails that wouldn't have been there if it was visible to see what you're
Hmm.
riding over top of. So it's always something just to be mindful of, and there are designated areas and spaces that are
Hmm.
great for playing in the snow. But hopefully, people can take some awareness that even if you can't see the land underneath the snow, you're still having an impact on it by being there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I mean motorized recreation is like a total another like can of worms, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I have done
Oh
my
yeah,
fair
no,
share
yeah.
of motorized
Yeah.
recreating, and it is a blast. But it's just being cognizant of where you are and what you're doing, I think is the main thing. And some people don't know until they don't been told, like if you've never had anybody bring up the awareness of like, yeah, there is flora and potentially fauna or whatever living underneath the snow, you wouldn't necessarily know to pay attention to that. So
Mhm.
it's just bringing awareness to the matter.
I think so, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Um, so we've kind of touched on humans impacting the landscape, mountain goats especially, and how we impact their scenarios. I wanted to hear more about what your experience has been being a woman in the science and hunting and wildlife and conservation spheres. So I kind of touched on it at the very beginning. These are areas that have been predominantly of a male orientation and had that kind of spin on things. What's been your experience, especially not coming from a hunting and fishing family or background, trying to dive in and learn and get involved in these conservation and wildlife spheres?
Yeah, it's been fun. I wouldn't change anything, of
Nice.
course. I've definitely had a lot of really amazing female mentorship, female mentors. I've had a lot of amazing male mentors. I've met a lot of amazing female friends along the way.
Mhm.
However, there have definitely been the moments of like feeling less than,
Mm.
not really knowing like my place in the matter. I think it was a bit hard for me, kind of like, especially growing up, like being in your 20s, being in school, you don't really know who you're supposed to be. And I personally got kind of sucked into who I thought people wanted me to be, which was kind of like this hunter who like spends all her time outside, who kind of plays into like what the picture of a biologist has been in the past.
But you're not a hunter.
I'm not a hunter, no,
Okay.
but I really thought I had to be. And that
Oh,
is, I
okay.
think for a while there, I thought I wanted to hunt so that I had more credibility. Um, I don't want to hunt for that anymore. I want to hunt primarily to, feed myself and my family.
Mhm.
And like that was a big turning point for me. Even just like how I dressed, I found like I if I was going to a convention, I wouldn't want to present as super female. I'd kind of want to like tone that down. And I've know that this I'm not the only person who's felt this from speaking to like many other female
Yeah.
scientists and conservationists. So
Yeah.
it's just like it's just little things like that, things that are kind of a bit hard to overcome, things that you don't really think about, like being aware of what earrings I'm going to put on. Like how
Yeah.
silly is that? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
play into how smart I am, but that is definitely like a thought that I had. And so I think just kind of like coming into it and wanting to break those bounds and being like, no, I don't have to conform to anything that has been in the past. I get to be who I am now, and that's going to be like the best biologist I can be because I am
Yeah.
being me. Um,
Yeah.
and so I'm really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about female mentorship in the space as well because I don't want like, a 20-year-old girl coming into this to feel the same way I did for so many years.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that because I have this podcast and I
Mhm.
also am chair for the Region 8 Backcountry Hunters and Anglers here in the Okanagan area. And yeah, I don't know that any of our male counterparts or colleagues and associates would consider, what shirt am I wearing today and
Yeah,
what earrings
right.
am I wearing and can I wear makeup to this event, or
Yeah.
if I look too girly, will people just dismiss what I have to say or my presence entirely?
Mhm.
It's certainly something that
Absolutely.
I also give consideration and thought to. Even doing this podcast, I have never worn anything too girly looking or traditionally feminine, for the mere aspect that in some instances it does matter to appeal to your audience,
Mhm.
and unless you have a very strong knowledge-based position, or credibility to what you're doing, those appearances unfortunately do matter. So as
Mhm.
myself, a new hunter and new person into the conservation world in the last few years, um, without that foundation of experience, or like you said, credibility, that track record to show, yeah, I've hunted X amount of big
Mhm.
animals or whatever, you do kind of have to earn your badges and earn your stripes, by, in some senses, conforming to what people expect, or
Mhm.
what is the norm,
Mhm.
until you have the confidence and the ability to really stand out. I've yet to see somebody who looks like a conventional quote unquote Barbie doll hair, makeup, lipstick, nails done or whatever, and still garners the respect of all of the well-known hunters and people in the space. So it's interesting that you say that, because I don't think people of a male orientation consider any of those fine details that we take into consideration when we're presenting ourselves at these types of events or in these spheres.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even just so I was in the Wild Sheep Society film Transmission.
Yeah.
And I had a moment in that film where I cried. So it was a very emotional week, that week of capture and call work that we did. And just like seeing these like sheep like die, not just like by harvesting, but like by bolt gun to the brain, like it's pretty, it was jarring. And I gave an interview where I was emotional and I cried. And afterwards, I seriously considered contacting the film crew to be like, please don't put that in. Like,
Really?
I don't want people to see that and to be like, oh, like she cries when animals are dying. Like, how can she be a biologist,
Mm.
And obviously I didn't, and I'm very proud of myself for not doing that, because I think it's a very important part of the film to show that, like, I
Yeah.
have seen that film so many times now in rooms full of big burly hunters, and everyone's crying, like everyone has those emotions.
Yeah.
Everyone has love for these animals, and it's okay. And it is an emotional field we work in, like
Yeah.
nature, like we all feel like that deep connection to nature for some reason. And when we see that being threatened, it hurts. And
Yeah.
sometimes it hurts enough to cry, and that's
Yeah.
okay. And it's okay to show those things, and it's okay to be vulnerable in these spaces. And I feel like there's been times where I haven't felt comfortable doing that. And
Mm.
but now I'm in a space where I can kind of overlook that and be like, no, like I can be this and still be a good
Yeah.
biologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I totally agree. I mean, nature is brutal, man. There are not
nature is brutal.
kind
Yeah.
ways to die in nature. Like, if you are being eaten alive by another animal, that is not a kind way to die. And if you are being put out of pain or misery because you have a disease and it's for the betterment of the survival of the herd, like, yeah, death is a brutal thing. And I think the more we can normalize the emotions that come with that, like, if you can watch an animal be killed, whether naturally being eaten by something else or being euthanized, basically, and not have any kind of emotion to it, there might be some lines for like psychopathy there, or, some unnatural element of human function if you are not feeling something.
Yeah,
I often
exactly.
share stories of me like bawling my eyeballs out the first time I had to kill a fish.
Oh.
And the first time I killed a grouse, like bawling my eyes out, and plucking them and be like, I'm so sorry.
I'm
I'm so
so
sorry.
sorry.
Like, that is, yeah, that's something that I definitely also strive to normalize, is just, I feel what I feel, and that's
Mhm,
what it is. And I'm
mhm,
not going to hide that, because it's, to me, it would be unnatural to try
mhm,
and pretend that I don't have the respect and the reverence that creates such an emotional response for me
mhm,
in harvesting an animal or having to euthanize an animal.
mhm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
the more that we put that out there, the more I think it becomes part of the narrative and the discussion. And yeah, I mean, most of the big burly hunters that I know are quite gentle people.
Oh,
I'm not gonna say
absolutely. They're
soft, but
the best.
like, they're
No.
totally have reverence for the animals that they're hunting, and
Absolutely,
it
yeah.
is an emotional experience. And I don't know a lot of bro hunters. I'm sure they're out there that just like, high five and chest bump, and
Mhm,
sure, in the excitement you might do that, but there's definitely more reverence and emotion from most of
mhm.
the guys and gals that I surround myself with in that hunting sphere.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
feel like most of the people are like that anyways.
Yeah.
Their hunters
Yeah,
are all
definitely.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what is exciting for you on the horizon in 2024? What are you aiming for, and where are you going?
I'm gonna get a job very
Nice.
soon. It's happening.
I mean, you've been doing jobs. You were telling
Yeah,
me
I
before
have
we
been
hopped online
working.
about some other stuff and jobs you've been doing and traveling you've been doing.
Yeah. I think that was also a not normal thing I did, at least not normal to like the people that I know in my circle who are also smart, very smart scientists. But yeah, so I finished my master's degree and I took some independent contracts and just really realized I was a bit burnt out. Especially after 8.5 years of straight school. Like I thought
Yeah.
going into my master's degree, I thought I had a really good idea of what I wanted to do and what it was going to be like and how great it was going to be. And then you learn so many things about science and about yourself going through grad school. I think I came out just with this completely different idea of who I was and who and what the world was.
Mm-hmm.
And just needed some time away from that to reignite my joy for it a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. Because at that point I was doing it just to say that I was doing it. Like I was doing the science, I was
Yeah.
working for Parks Canada, like these big exciting things, and I just kind of need to just step back so I could re-enter it with the joy and like passion I felt like when I started. This
Yeah.
is how I feel now. So yeah, applying for jobs currently. It's happening soon. I know it is because I've been saying
Yay.
that for 2 months now.
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Cool. Very
sure if
cool.
it's
And
gonna
so,
be.
sorry, go ahead.
I'm not even sure if it's gonna be like in wildlife specifically. I'm kind of open to any area of conservation.
Mm-hmm.
So excited for that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, conservation is wildlife. So no matter what you do,
Yeah,
it'll be something that has an
yeah.
impact on that world.
Hmm.
Um, what would be your 2 minute or less recommendation to somebody who's new to the conservation world, or like one thing that you wish that you had known before you started that 8.5 year journey into wildlife and conservation?
Yeah, I think I wrote down like don't be scared to ask questions.
Mm,
I think at least a lot of pressure I put on myself was like I thought I had to know everything.
mm,
Um, Even though I was a student, like I shouldn't have to know everything. I should be learning everything, right?
yeah,
So don't be scared to ask questions. Don't be scared to say that you don't know. Especially in nature, there's so many things we don't know. Like
yeah,
I studied mountain goats for 2.5 years, and I could be wrong about everything because they're still their own beings, and they make their own choices, and there's not always a measure you can put on that.
yeah,
Um, so I think, yeah, just ask questions. Don't be scared to be yourself, and the things that are meant to get you to where you're meant to be will come.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes it just takes patience.
yeah. Sometimes it takes patience, takes a little bit longer than you might expect, and
Mhm,
the the narrative doesn't always go according to plan, but it'll at least get you to somewhere in the general
mhm.
direction of where you were going.
Yeah, exactly.
And to wrap things up, I have a series of rapid fire questions. So these are
All
just
right.
quick ones that don't require a ton of explanation. But what would be your favorite wilderness resource, whether that's a podcast, a book, a forum, anything like that?
My gosh. I do love a podcast because I like just listening and going about my life.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Any that stand
podcast.
out?
I do love Talk is Sheep, the Wild Sheep Society podcast. I listen
Cool.
to that one quite often too. I've been
Yeah.
listening to yours though as well, and they're very
Oh,
well done. I do really enjoy them.
thank
Um,
you.
yeah, and I also think just kind of a plug for yours. I like how I like the diversity of people that you interview as well, because it's cool kind of seeing all the different people from all the different backgrounds who are kind of all playing into this whole realm of conservation.
Yeah.
Um, I like that there's like a lot of diversity. Hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
It's
aiming
good.
to keep the net wide, but still somehow related to wilderness and wild things.
Hmm. Hmm.
What would be your favorite outdoor snack?
Oh, piece of beef jerky for sure.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Something
I
salty,
after I ask that question, I'm always like, what do I have in my pantry? I want to eat something.
right? Need a snack.
When you go outdoor adventuring, are you a double sock or one sock layer kind of gal?
One sock.
Sock. Okay. Good socks. Do you have any kind of lucky item that you always take with you when you go out into the woods?
No, I don't. I
Okay.
don't think I've ever consciously put something in there, no.
Some people have a lucky hat, little rabbit's foot, special hunting
No,
knife or whatever, pocket knife that they take with them.
no.
And what's the one absolute essential thing that you have to have whenever you do go into the woods?
A good pair of boots.
Yeah, good pair of boots. Yeah, nothing
Absolutely,
worse
yeah,
than blisters. Yeah.
yeah. Bug spray
Um,
if it's that season.
yeah, yeah. Any last comments or things that you think that we didn't touch on that you'd want people to know, and where can they find you?
Um, I don't know, I think we touched on a lot. Um, yeah, I feel like this is just a good kind of opening chapter to like my next adventure is to the job. So thank you so much for kind of reigniting that in me.
Yeah.
If you ever want to talk about, if you ever have any inquiries, I definitely suggest reaching out via email. So laura.balyx@gmail.com. I'm sure Justina will provide that. And then on Instagram, I'm at Laura Balyx. And I have made a good effort to not make it just about wildlife, but just about my life, which is many things outside of wildlife. So if you want to give me a follow there, you'll get a whole slew of different kinds of things, but some mountain goats will be included in there as well for sure.
Yeah, yeah, a good smattering of mountain goats for good measure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yes, we will drop your contact information in the comment section down below so that people can reach out to you if they are interested in learning more about mountain goats, the research you're doing, or if they have any connections to wildlife and conservation jobs that might be of relevance or
Mhm.
or opportunities for you to dive into as well.
Mhm. Or
Well, thank
can I
you.
put one more thing in there? Or
Yeah,
if you're a
absolutely.
young female student, or you can be male too, and you need some direction, absolutely reach out to me. I love mentorship. I love leadership. I love sharing my experiences with all of that. And I'm here to amp you up and tell you that you're the best person ever for the job. And there's a space for all of us in conservation. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And if any of you are in the local area, Laura is based out of Penticton, so you can reach out and there is opportunity to connect. She'll be involved in BHA events and education and information sessions in the coming future. So there will be opportunity to connect on those fronts as well. And yeah, like you said, mentorship is critical. So please feel free to reach out to her. She is more than happy to connect with you. And thank you again for being on the show today. I'm very excited about the information that we have covered and just spreading that knowledge far and wide. So thank you for the time you invested, 8.5 years in total and in education, and then also specifically those 2.5 years learning about mountain goats so that you can spread the good word with everybody else as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been
Yeah.
great. Mhm.
Thanks for tuning in today to watch or listen, and make sure to hit that like or subscribe button to follow along wherever you get your podcasts. If you have any questions, comments, or reviews, please drop them down below. I will read them and I will get back to you. Or you can reach me at questions@entrypointhunting.com. If you know an expert or someone who offers great advice or is just growing rapidly in the field of hunting, angling, or conservation, please send them my way. I would love to reach out and connect with them. And until next time, friends, stay hungry.